The goal in the movie was to create a realistic journey for the boy and the tiger, and we started researching who would be the best tiger trainer in the motion picture business. And when we met with Terry, Ang went into depth about tiger behavior. Some of it made it to the script, and a lot of it was just knowledge that we got to understand before we started working with the tigers.
When Ang Lee came here to the ranch, I remember that we sat in front of my house. It's the first time I had such a conversation with a director. It never happened before, because it had nothing to do with the movie itself. It had nothing to do, especially with the tiger himself. We talked much more about the general story, the feeling, what it means, what it doesn't mean, what you feel.
So even script, I should give Terry credit, because in writing the script, I learned a lot from him.
Trainer never something to say about the script, or do you think this scene is realistic, or do you think there is something wrong in the scene? This never happened to me before. It happened only now with Ang Lee.
What I learned from Terry, particularly useful for doing this project, is actually about faith.
Ang Lee asked me if I believe in God. And after a long talk about God and religion, he asked me, why do I do this job? Why do I work with tiger, lion, leopard? Why do I do this? In training animals, there is a spiritual part. It's teaching something to an animal. And when you teach something to an animal, in fact, you teach to him a language. And for a short period of time, you and the animal speak the same language. You cannot learn their language. You have to teach them a language which is common to you and them. Before, this animal was danger for you. And now you have communication, and there is nothing material in that. So it makes you think to other things, not material, spiritual.
I have to give Terry that credit. He's not just a tiger trainer. I think spiritually, it taught me what it's like to have a relationship with a predator. Man's relationship with the tiger in that situation like Pai is going through, that's really valuable, not only in the shooting, but animating the tiger. I think it's very helpful too.
Ang decided early on the importance of having a real tiger working with us in order to inform the digital tiger.
I showed him 7 tigers which could do that job. And he chose very quickly one tiger.
The key tiger is a 7-year-old, 450-pound, gorgeous animal. His name is King.
Besides the fact that he has an amazing look, most importantly, Ang noticed that he had in Chinese markings on his forehead the symbol of King. And Ang felt, wow, that's almost beyond coincidence. This is something very special.
During the preparation of the movie, we talked together about tiger behavior. Is this behavior on the boat is realistic? And he rewrite certain scene of the movie according to what I suggest.
It's not just having animal do what we want them to do. You want to learn from their behavior, what animal is about.
The great thing about having the tigers on the movie for 12 weeks, it gave us many opportunities to capture great references that will be used by the animators to create a perfect match for live-action Richard Parker and the digital Richard Parker.
There are 23 real tiger shots in the film. Everything else is CG tigers. So our animals had to look absolutely positively real at a level that nobody had ever done before. And I don't know if anybody really was sure that it was going to get pulled off. Rhythm and Hughes seemed an obvious choice because of their experience with animals. The question was, could they make a realistic CG tiger? And then how much more complication was there in going 3D? It was quite a challenge, and it was a long time before we started to see Richard Parker shots where you'd start to go, oh, this might work.
There was a really great moment during shooting. We had been working on the tiger model for about 6 months at the time. We put together a little side-by-side showing the real tiger and the CG one. And I took that to Ang, and he looked at it and said, is that King? And I said, yes, it is, but that's not the real King. It was that moment that I knew that we were going to be able to pull this off. It was great to see the relief in his face, too, that he knew that this movie was going to be what he had imagined.
So it's a big job. We work together very closely, and they're building the model of those animals while we're shooting. It takes, I don't know, 9 months to build a tiger. the physicality of that tiger. And then after we shoot, we started the animation process, rendering real images, nitpicking every little detail. Some shots take 3 months, some shots may take up to 6 months. It's very difficult, long process.
Yes!
I think all movies should be intimate. That's why we watch the story, because we want to get it inside of us. We want to get the spiritual part. We want the drama. Most of the movie is the boy and the tiger drift on a boat in a vast ocean. It's a very compact situation in space. So you get both the vastness and also you have to deal with nature and everything. But that's just the backdrop of drama.
Aang could say the tiger is going to walk from one side of the boat to the other. And you could see when he's performing, he's tracking that with his eyes. He's not just mechanically doing it, he's picturing the tiger there. It's the most important thing for a visual effects person who's going to put in something that the actor really believes that it's there. And Serge just absolutely nailed that every time he did it. We did have a real hyena. Her name is Vlad. She looks ferocious, but when she's baring her teeth and smiling, she's actually laughing. She loves to be tickled. When she smiles, it's this massive teeth that just looks menacing. Aang saw that right away and said, that's Harry the hyena.
By bringing the real animal, you set a standard for the CGI companies. This is what you have to match.
We did model as perfect a match as we could to Vlad so that we could cut back and forth as well. There are only about 7 shots of the real hyena in the movie. It's still mostly the digital. Whenever Pi is in the scene, it's the digital character. It's the only time we use the real one is on simple insert shots.
They're building the model of those animals while we're shooting. It takes months to build the physicality of hyenas, a zebra, orangutan. So it's a big job.
Orange Juice is completely CG for the film. Anytime you do a primate, they're so close to people that we start to get really sensitive to what works and what doesn't. And it was really important to sell the sensitivity of the character. There's a special meaning to OJ that we wanted to subtly portray in her performance. There's one shot in particular, right before she meets her fate, where she looks at Pi, and that's sort of a connection moment that resonates to the symbolic second story in the movie. I told my crew, I said, this is your chance to fool your colleagues and to fool them that what they're seeing is actually a CG creation. The flying fish sequence has got to be one of my favorite scenes in the movie. On set, you know, you think about all these high-tech things. You got a wave tank with pre-programmed waves, and you have this special stereo camera. But when it comes to flying fish interaction, it's a bunch of guys on a raft standing by with rubber fish, just chucking them at our actor.
In the fish flying scene, he also has to fight the tiger, and a couple of blue men down there fighting with him.
Aang said it would be cool if, you know, I could be on the lifeboat and pretend to be a tiger. And this is amazing stuff because, you know, normally I just, you know, sit behind a desk, work with the animators, and don't get physically, you know, involved on a shoot. Being on set, you know, being in the presence of the real tigers and providing some of the physicality for Pi, for Serge to act against, feeling those forces and then being able to communicate that back to the animators here at RNH was an incredible experience.
Once we're back in Los Angeles and we're working on these shots, it was just fun to kind of, you know, have these fish bouncing off of the tiger, and the way the tiger reacts to certain things was fun to lay out. And there's this piece of software called Massive that we use, which every fish was given a little brain to decide where he's going to fly, you know, if he's going to veer off to the left to avoid something, or if he's going to dive back in the water. And they're, you know, each fish is programmed, and then we just kind of say go. And a lot of times you get what you get. Sometimes there's weirdos that kind of just go straight up. But it produces some fun moments.
We had to simulate them at 120 frames per second because the distance that they traveled through, we wanted them to hit the boat and fall down if they hit the boat. But because they're going so fast, they would actually start at the beginning one frame here and end past the boat and end up just flying right through the boat.
Actually, you might not notice that I cropped the frames, so it's a widescreen. So I have that extra black on there so I can put fish really outside in front of the black that feels extra outside of the screen. So that was great fun.
Our massive team says that this is probably the most difficult task that they've had on the job ever There were a lot of them, and they had to interact with water surfaces. I mean, these guys fly on the surface of the wave, and those waves are done in a different package. All of that stuff just comes right together, and with massive and animation and the water simulation just pulls it all together.
I can't risk my life every time I have to climb onto the boat for supplies. It's time to settle this.
The final training, Richard Parker is a crucial scene. And I want a scene in the center of the movie that everything stops. Forget about story, forget about motivation, just you and the tiger, life and death. It's highly focused, pure cinema. Just a sight and sound, and you feel the threat of the tiger.
When you train an animal, after a while, you build a relationship where you are a little bit superior to the animal. He will obey to a superior, not to an inferior. Plus, you have to build a common language for the animal to understand what you want from him. No! And these two things, you have to do them together.
Good.
In that scene, there are 3 different real tigers plus CG tigers. That really set the bar very high for Rhythm and Hughes, that they had to actually have shots that we could incorporate into a scene with real tigers. You could cut from a real tiger to pie to a CG tiger to pie to a real tiger, and it had to work. So the pressure was on.
The main challenge was just getting the two to look the same as we were cutting between the two.
We had to make sure that people really believed that he was on that boat with Pi.
It's the first time that I do a movie where there is a big part for the tiger, but a very big part also for a CGI tiger.
It's kind of a scary thing. It's pretty much putting the cards on the table to have a real tiger that you're cutting back to back. But it was something I knew was really important because it was what was going to make the bar as high as we possibly could make it. We talked at length with Terry Leportier, who's the tiger trainer, about how would someone go about taming a tiger in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. And what Ang did is have Terry basically act out the scene with the real tiger.
What the kid have to do in the movie with a tiger, I had to do it in reality. You build your position, but you never a dominant absolute king. I would say it's like a well-understood relationship with a father. A father is authority, but is also protection. I am a little bit of superior. I give you order, but I can protect you. And in fact, if he threats you, you have to know if this is a threat that you have to counter-threat, or if it is a threat that you have to avoid the confrontation. Because if you decide to avoid a confrontation and it was a threat that you had to counter, then you lose a big point in front of the animal. If you face this threat because you think this is a threat that I have to face, I have to counter-attack. And it was wrong. You're dead.
We shoot it in a backward kind of order. We shoot the tiger first because that, they spend like 2 weeks dealing with a tiger, and you don't want to work 8 hours with a tiger.
Thierry, our tiger trainer with the 2nd unit, shot about 4.5 hours worth of tigers on the boat.
So we blocked the scene out with the real tigers and shot the tiger on scenes where it was just the tiger itself.
It was actually great. We have a lot of aggressive shots. And then Tim, our editor, put together a scene.
I cut the scene, just cutting between previs pie and real tigers. And then Thierry, the tiger trainer, came in and sat with me for a day. And we went through those cuts, and I went through all the different pieces, and he told me what the tiger was thinking at that moment.
For example, that shot cannot come before this one because the reaction would not be realistic,
Usually when he's aggressive and growling, actually he's afraid. He's in a retreat. When he go about business, when he's aggressive, he doesn't make any noise, just go up and do business.
There's a scene where the tiger sharpens his claws on a board on the side of the boat. And apparently what that means for a tiger is, I'm really nervous, so I'm going to pretend I'm not nervous by doing this. And that, of course, hadn't been in the previs, because who knew?
You always have to give him another opportunity than confronting you, to give him the possibility of escaping or confronting. Because as soon as he has no other opportunity than confronting, he confronts you. And then you lose because he's much stronger than you, much quicker than you.
Then probably 3 weeks after we shot the tigers, then we shot the side with Surge, after we knew exactly what the action was going to be.
We do the reaction shot before we do the action shot. We certainly didn't put Surge in the boat with the tiger.
Eric, our animation supervisor, was there to give him an eye line and swat the stick. And I was sitting in the boat, at the other end of the boat, just reading off a script, exactly what each beats were, and talk them through the whole scene.
And then after we shoot, we start the animation process.
When we had shots where the tiger and the kid were on the boat together, it's the only way really to just get these visuals, accomplished.
So this is a great scene. The boat's completely empty when Surge, playing Pi, does his performance, and he had to move his head and imagine where the tiger was going to be at any given time. So we go and add our digital tiger in, add the shadows, and then replace the tank water completely with our ocean.
But there were also moments in that tiger training sequence where Eng just didn't get the performance out of the live tiger just because he wanted a higher level of aggression, or sometimes we couldn't get the camera in the right place. So there are shots in there where we just have boat and tiger.
Sometimes it's better to completely replace the boat so that the shadows and other things look as real as they possibly can. Here you see the different lighting passes that take the guy from looking flat lit to actually look like he's being lit in the sun. There's a mirror pass. This actually takes all the light that's bouncing off the boat in the sky and introduces little nuances in the fur to make it look like he's really there.
Whatever we do with the tiger, whether the shots make it in a movie or not, or just simply with dealing with them, they recorded a lot of good details as reference. That's very helpful for their animation.
So much of having a tiger look right, I mean, of course you have to get the fur and the light and the reflections right, but you also have to get the movement right.
The way you sell someone's weight is often by just the little actions that the toes make. You see the claw come out at certain times and you sense the balancing that's going on.
Looking at the tigers on set and all the reference that we had, I realized that a lot of the selling and believability of the tiger and Richard Parker would come from the paws. So we spent a lot of time on getting those right. The way that the nails protract and retract, the amount of fur and the blacker fur that shows from inside of the nails when they come out. Whereas in the past, the paws, they always suffered at the expense of the eyes and ear controls and more in-your-face stuff.
Once that was done, we'd have a team of technical animators go in and make the skin move right, make it shake and bounce as the tiger moves around.
Tigers have a very fine but colorful speck. If you look very closely at a tiger, it goes from like red to green to blue.
There were 10 million hairs on the tiger. They had to be colored the right way, they had to be combed with the right amount of curl.
All these little details had to get put in there to make Richard Parker look like the real tiger.
And we kept doing that over a period of a year, and that's what really drove us to deliver the level that we have today, which I think is one of the best digital animals that I've seen produced.
They had to do an incredible level of detail in their simulations.
What I saw, sometimes I'm not quite totally sure that it is a real tiger or the CGI tiger acting. It's very difficult to say, even for me.
It's a great resource of our research and learning process. What makes a tiger's character? The beauty of the CG is that you can create a character with a lot of respect of what tiger really is. So the real animal taught us a lot. Come on!